Well, good morning and welcome to Monday. It is Monday. It rolls around every week, it seems, the Monday morning blues might be setting in for you because of the rain that is rolling in. I got up this morning, looked out my window, and I thought, that's a strange color out there in the sky. And sure enough, I went to my weather report and there's rain coming in. Could we expect anything different this year? I don't know if they're trying to wash away the virus with all the floods. I don't know. Doesn't matter. But more rain in the forecast today. I think I read somewhere 1 to 3 inches are expected. Maybe not just today, but the next couple of days. So I'm so thankful I got my yard mowed. You can still see some tracks and footprints in some softer places because it's just so soft. But nonetheless, I got it mowed. Got the hedges trimmed, got the some things trimmed back. It's looking good, but just ready for more rain. I had to break the news to my son yesterday. Hey, you might need to, you're going to have to mow the yard. Now, he has allergies, and so between asthma and allergies, he doesn't get out and do the yard very often anymore, but he may have to mask up and do it while I'm gone to convention, because 2 weeks from now, it could be a jungle. You just don't know what it's going to be, but hey, listen, we're off to a great start this week. Had a great day yesterday. Had our first fellowship time, our first social gathering, really, in over 15 months, and it felt good to do that. Thank you for all who came out and had that. Our next one's coming up. We're going to have a noon meal together, July 4th. Everybody brings food in. For those of you that aren't Baptist, we call that a potluck. And so we're going to have a noon meal together, just share food and a gathering together, have a good time together, celebrating the opportunity to do it, the freedoms to do it, and the freedoms that July 4th remind us that we have in our country. And so in your reading plan, let's just dive in, all right? Let's just dive in. Wherever you're listening to, some are out in the streets of Fort Worth, others are in their homes. Some of you are listening later, and the rain may already be pouring down by the time you listen to this. But in our reading plan, and you can find that at fbccrowley.org, and you can click on the link button, and you'll find the reading plan. Then there's 2 reading plans this year. One is read it all the way through, and one is to read most of it. And that that reading plan that is most of it has 5 days a week reading. You get all of the major highlights. You skip over a few tedious areas of the scripture. The other one is 6 days a week. Hey, jump in. My group, I'm in a D group. Our group is in week 22 this week as we are reading through that. And we were reading through, in these first weeks, whatever week it was, that was the proverb that we would read for that week. And the proverb that I read in Psalm 22, let me just read you a portion of that. Proverbs 22:1 says this: a good name is to be chosen over great wealth. Wow. Let's consider that for a moment. A good name is to be chosen over great wealth. So it seems that the writer is setting up an option for you. It's almost as if, would you rather have a good name or would you rather be rich? Now, we play these games in youth group all the time, and I even have played it with some adult groups. It really sparks some discussion where you have 2 options, and you tell the group, stand in the middle, and then you have to pick an option. Invariably, every time, somebody will say, but I don't know what I want. No, choose. You got to choose. You have to make a decision. Which would you rather have? Would you rather have a good name or would you rather have great wealth? And it's an interesting discussion that can ensue following that. I tell you, some of the greatest talks I've had in group life, in group times, simply are as a matter of choice. Would you rather have this or this? Well, which would you rather have? Facebook is littered with these things everywhere. Now we've rephrased it a little bit. Here's 4 things, pick 2. Or another one is, you could have this mansion to live in, but you can't have these certain amenities for a year. Could you do it? Well, yes. I read one the other. You could live in this cabin for a year, free. Everything you want, but you can't have internet for a year. Bring it on, man. I'm just saying, bring it on. I can do a year without internet. I don't know. I say I can't, but maybe I'd go crazy. I don't know. But as long as I can read books, I think I'll be fine. I could live for a year, not knowing some things that are going on in our country, maybe even some things going on in our own religious convention. But anyway. So the writer is putting up this option, and he makes the statement. He answers it for you. He reveals what his position is. He says a good name is better than great wealth. A good name is to be chosen over great wealth, as if you had the option. If you had the option, what would you pick? Would you pick a good name or great wealth? Now, I know many of my listeners are probably going to say, oh, yeah, it's a good name. But that got me to thinking, what is in a name? What is a name when he's talking about this good name? So I did a little research this morning. I was reading this morning. I pulled up a couple of areas of research, and one commentator said this, that a name represents 3 things. A name represents existence, it represents character, and it represents reputation. Think about a couple of famous name changes in the Bible. Now think about that. Think about, now you have some minor name changes. You remember we went from Abram to Abraham. You went from Sarai to Sarah. Now those are minor. They didn't really change a lot, but do you remember what Jacob was changed to? That's right. It was changed to Israel. Major adjustment, major change. Went from Jacob meaning cheater and supplanter to Israel, which would become the father of the 12 tribes of Israel. And I mean, major life change there. Why? Because a name represents existence and character and reputation. Jacob had a reputation. He had a reputation that was not good. He had a reputation of an arrogant individual. As a boy, he'd come and tell his dreams, and maybe he was innocent in that, but he was the baby of the family at the time. Benjamin would come later. He was the baby of the family at the time, and sometimes they play into that role a little bit, don't they? And they want that extra attention, right? Well, he was favored by his daddy with the coat of many colors, and that so incensed the other brothers. I mean, they like, man, he just loves him more than he loves the rest of us. So he had a bad name, and he had you know what? I have walked down this path, and my brain is not functioning on all cylinders this morning. Jacob, the dad, would be showing his favoritism to his children. And Jacob needed that life change. Jacob and Esau, Jacob would have these issues in his life as a supplanter, as a cheater, as he would cheat the birthright, he would cheat the blessing from his brother, and he would then play that into the next generation, as Joseph would receive some favoritism, and he would play off of that as well. But Jacob had a name change. He changed it to Israel. When you get to the New Testament, there was a major name change. You remember what it was? You had Saul, who had a distinct existence and character and reputation, and he changed it over to Paul. Why? Because he wanted to get away from the reputation that he had. Now, we can't really do that too easily today. We can't just change our names, can we? And this is why it is so critically important that we honor our name. I'll never forget the conversation that that my dad had with me, and I know lots of dads have had with their children. Son, you are carrying the family name. Don't deride it. Don't put it into the gutter, that you need to live up to a certain reputation that this name affords you. Now, we weren't great people. We weren't great wealthy people. We weren't great influential people. He was just trying to instill a sense of family pride and say, look, live up to the name. Why? Because a name involves so many things. You've got the existence. The very fact that you have a name is that you exist. You go into some cultures in our world today. I remember going to a naming festival in southern Niger, Africa, a few years back, and we were invited into a naming ceremony that one of the families had a child, and they were preparing to name the child, but the child had already been, they don't name the child until they're a week old. Why? Because they're not sure they're going to live. They're not sure they're going to live. So they don't even give them a name until they're certain that they're going to live past the first few days of life. Wow. It's almost as if that child doesn't really exist until they get a name. Well, there's something to that. Who are you without a name? Who are you? You have a name because if somebody says, who are you? You give them your name. That is the point of your existence. I have a name. Well, tied to that name then is also character and reputation. What kind of not only who are you, what kind of person are you? And that name, have you ever noticed that there's a female name nobody takes? You know what I'm talking about? Jezebel. You rarely hear of any girl named Jezebel. Why? Because there's a certain character that goes along with that name. It's just like, don't tempt fate on this deal, right? I mean, there's just this character that follows the name Jezebel. Now, I'm sure somebody knows a girl named Jezebel, but very rarely. Why? Because there's just this understanding. There's just a negative perspective how many, Ichabod. You don't hear Ichabod either. At least not in Judeo-Christian circles. You don't hear Ichabod. You don't hear Jezebel because these carry such a negative perspective with them that we don't even name our children these names. There's a character that follows. Now, just because you're given that name by your parents does not mean you automatically have that character. But the social pressures, the poking fun at you, it's going to add up over time. And so we just stray away from some of these things. Then there's the reputation. People would name their children with this expectation of character and the expectation of this reputation. I'm naming this child with the hope that they would become this. We in the West, we don't do that very much. The Eastern peoples, they do this. And I'm not talking about East Coast America. Come on, further east than that. The Eastern peoples of the world do this a lot. We in the West, we don't carry that a lot. Now, the only sense of character and reputation that we put into this at all is that we want fathers like to have their sons named after them sometimes, or maybe they give them a name that represents a grandfather or a grandmother, and we hearken back to somebody that was influential in our lives, and so we give a name to a child that is the same as somebody that was influential in us, that made a difference in our lives, and we pass that on to the next generation. My son's name is Samuel. Now, there's two reasons for that. One is that it refers to Samuel in the Bible, but it also is his great-grandfather's name. And he was such an influential individual. This would be Dulcie's grandfather. Such a great man of God, a great influencer for Christ and an influencer in his community. That this is just a name that came to mind, that we would name him after those two characters. and there's no pressure on him to be those people, but it just represents a quality that we wanted to instill in them. People do this all the time. We just may not understand that it represents a character that we hope for in our children. So we have existence, and then we also have character, what we are hoping for. That's a future. So you have present, you exist, you have this name, now you live, you exist with this name, that's right now. You have a hope of a character trait down the line, and then there's also, as you age, there's a reputation that follows you. You don't want your reputation necessarily to precede you. That usually has a negative connotation, but so you have character that says, I want to be this kind of person. You have reputation. This is the person I have been, and your name gets associated with that. So how is it for you? What kind of existence have you had? What kind of character have you applied to the name that you have? What kind of reputation have you built up over time? Is it positive or is it negative? When somebody mentions your name, do they brighten up or do they growl? Do they consider your name and go, wow, yes, I just love that person? Or do they go, oh my goodness, are they around because I really want to leave the room right now? I mean, what kind of reputation have you presented, and what kind of person are you? Your name is existence. Your name is character that your parents hoped you would become. And then there is the reputation, the life that you have lived. All three of these things represent a name. A good name is to be chosen over great wealth. Consider these things today.